Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. The Victorian era. You've probably seen the portraits, pale women in corsets, sitting very still, surrounded by lace and mahogany. Everyone looks so dignified, so delicate, so proper. But here's the thing, Victorian women weren't living in a polite, sepia-toned painting. They were surviving, enduring, conforming to a society that tied up their waists, their minds, and their futures in ways that were deeply bizarre and often quietly horrifying. So before you slip under the covers and get cozy, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy falling asleep to history that's more bizarre than boring. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing who's drifting off with us from across the world. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum in the background, the kind that makes everything feel far away and unreal. And let's slip together into tonight's story. Tonight's journey. The bizarre things Victorian women had to endure. And fair warning, you won't want to romanticize this era ever again. We're going to take this slow, gently. And in the second person, meaning you are going to live this, not as a queen, not as a duchess, not even as someone wealthy enough to own more than 3 dresses. No, tonight, you are just you, but born into a time when womanhood came wrapped in velvet and shame, in tight corsets and silent expectations. A time when your uterus could be declared hysterical, your ankles were considered scandalous, and your education was mostly embroidery and quiet obedience. This isn't a tale of polite tea parties and strolling in the gardens. This is a sleep-inducing, deeply immersive walkthrough of what it would actually be like to live one day as an ordinary woman in Victorian England. We'll start by waking up in your cold, uncomfortable bed, a mattress that's more straw than cushion, surrounded by the eerie quiet of a house that isn't yours, but belongs to your father or your husband or your employer. Then we'll wash or try to using water that's been sitting overnight in a ceramic jug and smells like something faintly floral and also faintly suspicious. We'll dress in garments that weigh more than your weekly worth, learn about the twisted expectations of beauty and health, eat food that may or may not contain arsenic, and try not to faint from the corset that's designed not to protect your spine, but to mold your body into a perfect, gasping silhouette. We'll learn what happens if you speak too loudly, if you laugh too hard, if you bleed too often. We'll visit the places you're allowed to go, and the ones you're absolutely not. You'll meet the people you serve, the doctors who might lobotomize your sister, and the neighbor who keeps talking about spirits and seances. We'll end much later in your cold little bed again, with shadows moving outside your thin curtains, and the very real fear that tomorrow may come with another punishment dressed as politeness. So close your eyes if they're not already heavy, and take a breath. You're about to step into the lace-trimmed nightmare of Victorian womanhood, and it starts now. Your feet hit the cold floorboards. You wince. Even with your stockings on, it feels like the chill is climbing up through the wood itself. There's no carpet, of course. Rugs are reserved for the parlor or the drawing room spaces guests might see. Your room is private, which means unadorned, which means cold. The pitcher and basin sit on a wooden washstand in the corner. The water inside has been left overnight, and it's gone icy. You dip your fingers in. A mistake. You suck in a sharp breath, biting the inside of your cheek. It's too early to yelp, and even if it weren't, proper women don't make noise. Not even from discomfort. There's no plumbing here, no hot running water, no sink. What you have instead is a heavy ceramic pitcher filled the evening before by a servant, or, if you are the servant, by yourself after hauling it up the stairs. The water might have been clean yesterday. It's hard to tell now. A few motes of dust float near the surface. A bit of hair, possibly yours, possibly not. You splash your face, then your neck. Quickly. No soap yet, that comes later, maybe, if there's time. You reach for a small towel, rough and thin, the kind that never quite dries, only changes texture from damp to brittle depending on the season. Your teeth? That's a separate ordeal. There's a small cup on your nightstand. Inside it, a tooth powder made from crushed charcoal, chalk, or baking soda, depending on your station and what your family can afford. Some women use salt, some use ashes from the fireplace. If you're lucky, yours smells faintly of mint or cloves. If you're not, it smells like old bones and damp linen. Your toothbrush is made of bone or wood, with natural bristles, stiff, easily frayed, and already stained from yesterday. You dip it into the powder, grit your teeth, and begin to scrub. The sensation is harsh, not clean, more like sanding a floor. You rinse with water from the pitcher. There's no concept of mouthwash here, just a quick spit into the basin, which, yes, you'll have to empty later. You might be clean, but you certainly don't feel it. Now comes the soap. It's stored in a dish near the basin, a greyish chunk of lye and fat. There are no floral notes, no exfoliating beads, no soothing oatmeal, just something that smells vaguely of the outdoors and hard decisions. You rub it between your hands, lather as best you can, and wipe down your arms and face again. A full bath? That's not happening this morning. That's a luxury reserved for once a week. If you're lucky, if you live in the city, you might have access to a shared washroom. If you live in a village, or work as a domestic servant, the options are far more rustic: cold water in a tin basin, soap that burns if it gets in your eyes, and a vague hope that no one walks in while you're scrubbing behind your ears. And then, of course, there's your hair. Victorian hair care is a study in restraint and patience. You don't wash it daily or even weekly. Hair washing is a laborious, inconvenient process. The water must be heated, the soaps must be carefully mixed, and drying it could take the better part of a day. Instead, you brush, at least 100 strokes. You start at the scalp and work your way down, using a boar bristle brush that's probably embedded with your grandmother's hair. If your hair is long, which it almost certainly is because short hair is scandalous unless you're ill, then you twist it into a braid or coil it into a bun. There are no elastic bands, only pins, lots of pins. And if you're lucky enough to be upper class, your maid does all this for you, even if she's clearly thinking about throwing the brush out the window. Now, food. Breakfast, the first meal of the day, and possibly the most disappointing. You head downstairs or into the kitchen, your stomach growling, but your expectations low. If you're working class, your breakfast consists of bread, stale, dense, and baked 2 days ago. You scrape on a bit of butter, if you have any. Maybe some jam made from berries that were about to rot. If you're in a poorer home, it's dripping leftover fat from last night's meat, slathered on bread to keep hunger at bay. No eggs, no bacon, no hot tea, unless someone boiled water already. You might get a lukewarm cup of weak brownish liquid pretending to be tea. Or, if you're truly scraping, you get milk and water, half a mug of boiled water mixed with a few drops of old milk to make it look cloudy. The illusion of luxury. If you're middle or upper class, breakfast looks different but still isn't good. You might have porridge, oatmeal cooked into a thick greyish paste, no sugar, maybe a pinch of salt. If the cook is feeling creative, there could be a poached egg or a kipper smoked fish, salty and pungent, making the whole room smell like brine and 5 a.m. regrets. Tea, if it exists, is weak and milky. Coffee is rare and expensive. Orange juice, forget it. That fruit is seasonal, imported, and treated like medicine. You'll be lucky to smell citrus once a year. Food isn't about flavor. It's about function. It fills the stomach. It gets you through the morning. And for many women, breakfast is eaten standing, in a rush, in silence, because the house must be cleaned, the children fed, the laundry soaked, or the employer woken and served before the bell rings. There is no leisurely sit-down with a newspaper and jam-covered toast. You chew quickly, swallow often, and you do your best to ignore the grit in the bottom of your tea. Clean? Barely. Full? Hardly. But ready? You have to be, because the corset is waiting, and everything only gets worse from here. You stand in front of the wardrobe, or, more accurately, the single wooden chest at the foot of your bed. It creaks when you open it, and the smell that rises out is familiar like cloth that's seen too many seasons and not enough soap. There's no walk-in closet, no curated outfit rack, no options. You don't choose what to wear. Your station in life has already made the choice for you. If you're poor, it's simple. You own one dress, maybe two. The one you're wearing now is your work dress. Faded, mended, stiff from soap that didn't quite rinse out. It scratches in the wrong places and pulls in others. It's made of wool or heavy cotton, thick enough to keep out the wind but not the cold. And then there's the corset. Calling it underwear is generous. It's more of a ribcage prison, made of whalebone or steel, laced tightly to mold your torso into the ideal hourglass, regardless of what your actual shape is or how well your lungs enjoy being flattened. You wrap the corset around your body and begin to tighten it. Or, if you're fortunate, a maid does it for you. Or, if you're the maid, you do it while holding your breath and hoping your mistress doesn't demand something during the process. You can't reach full tightness on your own, not really, but tight enough is good enough. The pressure starts to build. Your waist compresses, your ribs ache, your breathing shortens shallow, delicate, like a proper lady, not because it's elegant, but because it's all your body can manage now. Some women faint, some vomit, some develop permanently displaced organs, but you smile through it, because a lady must be graceful, and grace, apparently, lives somewhere between hypoxia and spinal realignment. Over the corset goes your chemise-thin linen, the layer that's supposed to protect your skin from the corset's rubbing. It doesn't. Then your petticoats 1, 2, maybe 3, if the weather's cold, and you're expected to look properly plumped. A bustle, if you're fashionable. A hoop skirt, if you're behind the times, or playing catch-up with hand-me-downs. Each layer adds weight, bulk, heat. By the time you're fully dressed, your torso is crushed, your legs are encased in fabric, and the very concept of sitting down feels theoretical, and you're still not done. You add your gown, the dress itself, often dark in color, even if it's morning. Bright colors are for children or actresses, neither of which you're allowed to be. The dress has high collars, tight sleeves, buttons down the back, and a shape designed not for comfort or movement, but for observation, so that anyone who sees you instantly knows where you belong and who owns you. Then your boots, not soft slippers. These are leather, stiff, narrow, and laced tight. The heels are small but hard, the soles unpadded. You will be wearing them for 12 hours. You will blister, and you will not complain. Once you're dressed, you catch your reflection in the cracked mirror hanging on the wall. You look composed, restrained, the picture of feminine propriety. You don't look anything like yourself. Now, step into your house. If you're upper class, you may have more rooms, more walls, more decor, but still no privacy, no central heat, no insulation. You share your space with servants, siblings, sometimes strangers visiting for days at a time. You may be wealthy, but you still freeze in winter and sweat through your corset in July. If you're middle class, your home is narrow, often tall, often thin. It smells of coal and boiled cabbage. The stairs creak. The windows let in drafts. The wallpaper peels at the corners. You have parlors you can't use, dishes you can't touch, and rooms that exist purely to impress others, not comfort you. If you're poor, the house isn't really a house. It's a room, maybe two, with low ceilings, cracked floors, and a roof that leaks in 3 places. You share it with your siblings, your parents, maybe your grandparents. Privacy is a fiction. Someone is always watching, always coughing, always taking up space you desperately want to yourself. And the cold, it's everywhere. Victorian homes are not warm, even the well-built ones. Fireplaces exist, yes, but they only heat one room at a time, and coal costs money. If you're lucky, you huddle close to the hearth. If you're not, you wrap yourself in your only shawl and pretend you can feel your toes. At night, you sleep in layers, stockings, wrappings, blankets that smell of damp and age. Your breath fogs the air above your bed. You fall asleep with fingers curled under your arms, knees to chest, trying to hold the last bit of warmth inside your body before the morning steals it again. And in summer, you swelter. Homes aren't built for ventilation. The windows open, yes, but there are no screens. In come the flies, the soot, the stench of horse manure rising from the street. If you're near factories, you inhale smoke. If you're near the river, you inhale sewage. And the flies, always the flies, swarming your face, your food, your ears. They're not just an annoyance, they're a warning. Of cholera, of typhoid, of another summer spent praying the smell doesn't mean death is coming. If you work in someone else's home as a maid, a laundress, a cook, you don't sleep in a bed at all. You sleep on a cot in the attic, or in a servant's hallway, or not at all when the master comes home late and demands hot tea at midnight. Your days start before the sun rises and end long after it sets. You live among wealth, but none of it is yours. You touch silver, but you eat from cracked plates. You clean crystal, but you drink from a chipped mug. The irony of Victorian life is this: the appearance of comfort is everything. The reality of comfort that's optional. You wear layers of silk over your suffering. You place lace curtains over the rot. You perform grace, cleanliness, decorum in houses that creak, chill, suffocate, and betray you at every turn. And when it all becomes too much, the corset, the draft, the noise, the stench, you close your eyes and remind yourself, it could be worse. You could be married. You've made it out of the house. Corset tightened, breakfast endured, boots laced, hair pinned, and modesty triple-checked. Congratulations. Now the real work begins. And by real, I mean relentless, thankless, and often invisible. Because in Victorian society, a woman's labour isn't considered work, not unless it involves a wage and a man's approval. Everything else? That's just your duty. Let's start with laundry. Victorian laundry is not toss it in the machine and go make tea. It is an ordeal, a ritual of boiling, scrubbing, wringing, drying, starching, and praying. It doesn't rain before the linens are done. If you're a domestic servant, it begins before dawn. You rise while the house is still sleeping, your own body stiff from yesterday's labour, and begin to haul water pail by pail, from the pump, the well, or the grimy kitchen tap if you're lucky. Cold, heavy, splashing against your skirts. The copper pot must be heated. That means building a fire. Your hands, already raw from lye and scrubbing stones, tremble as you feed the flames and stoke them with bellows. You wash clothes in order, whites first, then colours, then everything that smells like it dyed in a coal cart. The soap is hard and caustic, homemade if you're poor. If you're rich, your servants are burning their hands with it instead. You scrub with a board, kneeling over a basin, muscles aching from repetition. One shirt takes 10 minutes. You have 24. The underclothes are worse, full of secrets that no one acknowledges but everyone leaves for you to clean. Then there's wringing, twisting sheets with strength you didn't know you had, hoisting them onto lines that droop under the weight of damp cotton. Your arms burn, your back screams, and tomorrow when they're dry, you'll iron them with a cast iron press that has to be heated over coals. No temperature control, no steam, just burns, blisters, and the constant smell of scorched linen. And that's just laundry day. If you're not laundering, you're likely cleaning. Scrubbing floors with a rag and a bucket, no mop. On your knees, dusting high shelves with cloths tied to sticks, emptying chamber pots, sweeping soot from fireplaces that refuse to stay clean. Polish the silver, refill the lamps, replace the candles, shake out the rugs, chase the mice. You're always moving, and no one sees it. If you're middle class and not doing the work yourself, you're overseeing the women who are, making sure the servants are efficient, silent, obedient, and making sure your reputation isn't tarnished by lazy housework. Because no one ever praises a clean house, but they'll certainly gossip about a dirty one. Even if you're properly married and provided for, your schedule isn't idle. Your morning might include managing the household accounts, ordering coal, inspecting the meat delivery, and arguing with the butcher about the suspicious grey streaks in the beef. Then it's on to sewing, mending, and repairing everything the men of the house have worn thin without a second thought. You hem trousers, darn socks, re-stitch seams. If you don't, you'll have to buy new ones, and that costs money, his money, which you must ask for. Every task, no matter how small, becomes a dance, an exhausting performance of modest efficiency. You must appear busy, but not flustered, neat, but not vain, skilled, but never proud, because pride in women is unbecoming. And the children, if you have them or care for them, your work multiplies. A Victorian mother is expected to be nurturing, disciplined, omnipresent, and somehow invisible. You nurse, you bathe, you swaddle, you entertain, you discipline, you soothe. You teach manners, morals, prayer, and posture, all while remaining emotionally neutral and physically presentable. And if you're not a mother, you're still expected to help with someone else's, a sister's, a neighbor's, your employer's. You do it because you must, because that's what women do. Let's say you're unmarried. Perhaps you live alone. Perhaps you're what they call a spinster, a word sharpened by pity and condescension. You work outside the home then, maybe as a governess living in someone else's house, raising someone else's children, and knowing you're never quite part of the family. You sleep in the attic. You eat alone. You are expected to educate, discipline, and love the children without ever being seen to grow attached. Maybe you're a milliner, a seamstress, a factory worker in a textile mill. Your hands bleed from needles or catch in the looms. Your fingers swell. Your lungs ache from dust. Your eyes blur from candlelight and squinting at fine embroidery. Maybe you're a match girl, dipping wooden sticks into white phosphorus, a substance that slowly poisons you from the inside out, blackening your jaw until it falls apart. The pay is pennies. The factory is hell. But you go every morning because you must. Or you're a maid of all work, the lowest rank in domestic service. You do everything. Cooking, scrubbing, lifting, fetching, serving, bowing, apologizing. You work 16 hours a day, 6.5 days a week. There are no lunch breaks, no sick days. If you faint quietly, preferably into a pile of laundry. And what of breaks? There are none. You rest when the work is done, which is never. The house is always dirty. The children are always hungry. The fire always needs tending. And the master always needs something. You eat standing up. You drink cold tea. You relieve yourself in an outhouse or a tin can, depending on where you live. You get 5 hours of sleep, maybe, and when the sun rises, it all starts again. You carry this labor in your bones. It bends your back before middle age. It warps your hands. It shortens your breath. And yet, when you pause just for a moment, someone will ask you why you're being idle. Because Victorian women don't rest. They endure. You might be tired. You might be hungry. You might be covered in soot and starch. But none of that matters, not in the eyes of the Lord. Because in Victorian England, your soul is under constant surveillance, not by cameras or social media, but by God, by angels, by saints, by neighbors, by the priest at the pulpit, and maybe, just maybe, by that strange portrait in the hallway that seems to watch you when you walk past. Morality isn't just preached here, it's weaponized. As a woman, your virtue is your currency, not just in society, but in eternity. Your every thought, every glance, every hemline is being measured not just for modesty, but for moral weight. A slip of the tongue, a moment of envy, a second of impure thought, they're all catalogued. And the books of judgment, they're already being written. You attend church. Of course you do. Whether you believe or not is beside the point. In your community, attending church isn't about faith, it's about appearances. If you don't show up, people talk. If you yawn during the sermon, people really talk. And if you're seen whispering during hymns, well, prepare for an unsolicited visit from the vicar. The sermon is long. The pew is hard. The language is condemning. You're reminded that Eve brought sin into the world, that your body is temptation, that obedience is holiness, and that suffering, yours specifically, is virtuous, even sacred, because a good woman endures without complaint. A better one thanks God for the opportunity. And then there's the fear, not just of hell, though yes, hell is mentioned often, and in vivid, sizzling detail, but of being unnatural. What is unnatural? Well, everything that isn't meek, maternal, silent, or domestic. Women who speak too freely, unnatural. Women who question doctrine, dangerous. Women who enjoy life a little too much, probably witches. Because yes, even in the heart of industrialized Victorian England, the whisper of witchcraft still lingers in the shadows. Not with pointed hats and broomsticks, though that image exists in the background, but in subtler, more insidious ways. Herbal remedies? Suspicious. Dream interpretation? Forbidden. Palm reading? A sin. Tarot cards? Moon rituals? And women who know too much about plants? Be careful. Very careful. Knowledge without permission is still heresy. And women with unexplained knowledge are always at risk. You've been told, directly or indirectly, that if you step outside the bounds of faith, the correct faith, your punishment won't just be social. It will be cosmic. There are superstitions too, not officially sanctioned, of course. But everyone believes them. Everyone passes them down in whispers, in half-truths. In the quiet, suspicious way people explain a death that came too suddenly, or a child born with something wrong. You don't open an umbrella indoors. You never place new shoes on a table. Mirrors are covered after a death, lest the soul become trapped inside. A bird tapping on your window means someone you love will soon die. And if you see a dog howling at night, turn away. It's seen something you aren't meant to. Superstitions live in the gaps where religion doesn't quite reach. They give shape to fears that sermons can't soothe. The people around you, your mother, your midwife, your neighbor, with the mole on her neck, they all believe, even if they say they don't. A woman in town loses her baby. She says it was illness, but someone else says it was punishment for skipping mass, for gossiping, for refusing her husband. Another woman bleeds too long after childbirth. Someone mutters that she was touched by the devil. Another swears she saw her picking herbs in the moonlight. Women are always one misstep away from scandal, from blame, from divine correction. And what about your own body? You're told that your womb is delicate, fickle, prone to wandering. Yes, wandering. Female hysteria is a diagnosis that's taken very seriously. If you laugh too loud, cry too long, or faint without permission, it might be your womb drifting up toward your heart, choking your rational thought. There are doctors, of course, specialists in women's medicine, men who treat your condition by prescribing things like rest, cold water dousing, tight-laced corsets, and if you're especially lucky, electrotherapy. Some women are sent to asylums, not for hearing voices, not for harming others, but for being inconvenient, for refusing to marry, for grieving too long, for disagreeing with their husbands. There are institutions filled with women who weren't mad until they were told repeatedly that they were. They are hysterical, melancholic, difficult. Their punishment is seclusion, silence, and sedation. Laudanum, morphine, bleeding, ice baths, and the long, echoing corridors of a sanitarium whose halls smell of damp wool and vanished daughters. And yet, through all this, you're expected to be devout, prayerful, grateful. Your prayer book is tattered from overuse, the pages thin, the cover soft from clutching. You whisper the words every night, not always because you believe, but because what if it's all true? You light candles for protection, for healing, for your soul to be spared when it all becomes too much. And when your thoughts become too loud, when your grief, your confusion, your exhaustion threatens to leak out, you do what every good Victorian woman is taught. You suppress, you smooth your skirts, you say a prayer, you smile, and you remember, to doubt is dangerous, to question is unladylike, and to disobey, well, that's how women end up with a reputation, or worse, with a diagnosis. Dinner, a moment perhaps of respite, a break from scrubbing, stitching, hauling, or being judged by people who think your personality is a flaw. You imagine warmth, comfort, good food. But this is the Victorian era. Comfort comes in appearances, not experiences. And food? Well, that depends. If you're poor, and let's be honest, most women are, your meal is simple. Not charmingly rustic, not quaint, just survival. One greasy, half-boiled bowl at a time. You sit at a wobbly wooden table with 3 other people, maybe 5, maybe more. There's one pot, and it holds whatever was left in the larder and didn't smell suspicious enough to throw out. Welcome to stew, or as it's often known, pottage. A vaguely brownish mixture of root vegetables, dried peas, and maybe if someone's been generous or careless, a shred of bacon or a mystery bone with something still clinging to it. You eat with a spoon or your fingers. You eat quickly, not because you're in a rush, but because the flavor gives you second thoughts the longer it stays in your mouth. Bread is served on the side, stale, dense, cut with chalk, sawdust, or alum if the baker is more interested in profits than honesty. Butter is a luxury. Cheese is rare. Fruit is seasonal and usually rotten by the time it gets to you. You sip weak beer or water that may or may not be hosting a colony of parasites. Tea is a luxury. Milk is warm if it exists at all. Most nights your stomach isn't full, just confused. But let's say you're a bit better off, middle class, married to a man who works in an office and believes dinner should be respectable. Now, it's not just about the food, it's about how you eat it. Dinner begins with a ritual. Napkins folded just so. Forks aligned in precise rank. Your hands must be visible, but not vulgar. You must not rest your elbows. You must chew discreetly. You must not talk with your mouth full, but you must also never leave long pauses in conversation. You are expected to be charming, but not loud, knowledgeable, but never opinionated, beautiful, but never hungry. The meal arrives in courses: soup, fish, roast, pudding, fruit. Each dish a chance to fail at etiquette. The soup is thin. The meat is overcooked. The pudding is dense and oddly salty. But you smile, you sip, you dab your mouth, you say thank you. You do not complain, not about the flavor, not about the temperature, not about the fact that you're slowly suffocating under 6 pounds of linen and etiquette manuals disguised as sleeves. And if you're in high society, then things get even worse. Meals are less about nourishment and more about performance. You sit in a gown you cannot breathe in, next to a man who cannot remember your name, across from a woman who once publicly corrected you for using the wrong fish fork. The food is grand, decorated, prepared by servants you never see. It smells incredible. It tastes like pressure. You are not allowed to eat too quickly, or too much, or appear as though you haven't eaten all day, which you probably haven't. There are oysters, game, exotic sauces, jellied things that should not be jellied. There's blancmange, tongue, eel in aspic, something boiled beyond recognition and politely described as continental. Dessert is a pyramid of fruit you may look at but not touch, and if you're lucky, a gelatinous mold that trembles in solidarity with your posture. And then conversation. You're not expected to say anything original, just agreeable. The men discuss business, war, industry, parliament. The women discuss flowers, fabrics, servants who've recently been sacked. You listen, you nod, you wait for your turn to say something neutral. And then there's the entertainment. If you're working class, it might be a drink at the public house. Not for you, of course. That's where men go. You stay home, washing dishes and wishing your husband wouldn't come back drunk again. Maybe your neighbor stops by with gossip. Maybe someone sings. Maybe someone cries. The walls are thin. Everyone hears everything. If you're a domestic servant, you're not allowed out. Your evening entertainment is polishing the silver and pretending not to cry into your apron because your feet have started to bleed again. But if you're middle class, you might be invited to a parlor game. Ah yes, entertainment in a living room, dressed in antimacassars and social anxiety, card games, charades, reading aloud from improving literature. You play the piano if you can. You do not play well. You play properly. You never show off. You sing if asked, not too loudly, not too passionately, and only songs deemed appropriate. Laughter must be delicate. Amusement must be demure. You may never, ever appear to enjoy yourself too much. And if you're in high society, it's theatre, opera, a ball. But here's the truth. Even those are not fun. Not really. At the opera, you sit, you watch, you nod, as though the plot makes any sense at all. At the theatre, you clap politely. You do not laugh unless everyone else does first. At a ball, you stand for hours, waiting for someone to ask you to dance. You are not allowed to ask them. You smile. You pretend. You hope your shoes don't betray you by squeaking or bleeding. The dances are rehearsed. The music is repetitive. The lights are hot. And there is always someone watching. Always an aunt in the corner, a chaperone by the punch bowl, a dowager duchess measuring your worth by the stiffness of your spine and the meekness of your gaze. Entertainment is not for pleasure. It is for social proof. It's a show, and you're the scenery. But later, when the guests have left, and the fire is low, and the corset is finally undone, you sit in your chemise, too tired to even untie your boots, and you wonder, was this all supposed to be the reward? Was this really the good life, because today you smiled through the meal, you played the right song, you complimented the terrible pudding, and still no one noticed when you disappeared for 5 minutes to cry in the hallway. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again, and if you're lucky, they'll let you serve the jelly instead of being it. You wake up coughing. Again, your throat feels raw, your chest is tight, but you don't say anything not yet. Illness in the Victorian era isn't just a health risk, it's a social risk. If you speak of it too soon, you'll be accused of complaining. Speak of it too late, and they'll be picking out your mourning clothes. Everyone is always a little bit ill. It's part of the atmosphere, like soot or morning crepe. You go about your morning with a handkerchief pressed to your lips. Not a clean one. Mind you, it's been folded and refolded for weeks. You hope no one notices the pink tinge. You pray it's not blood, because you know what blood means. It means consumption, tuberculosis, the wasting disease. The romantic killer, if you're a poet, the brutal executioner, if you're a servant. Pale skin, delicate cough, weight loss, the ideal aesthetic, right up until you're bedridden and coughing up pieces of your lung. The house is full of sounds, not conversation coughing. Everyone is coughing. Children, elders, women too scared to sit down for fear they'll never stand again. And yet, no one goes to the doctor unless they absolutely must, because the doctor is expensive and worse, useless. Victorian medicine is generous with its imagination and stingy with its results. If you're middle or upper class, the doctor arrives at your house. He's dressed better than you, carries a leather bag, smells like cologne and death. He asks questions but rarely listens to the answers. He prescribes things like mercury for syphilis, arsenic for your nerves, opium for everything else. If you're poor, there is no house call. There is no physician. There's a midwife down the street, or a local wise woman, or a barber with a jar of leeches and a vague sense of anatomy. You go to them when the pain becomes too much, and often you don't come back. The treatments, bleeding of course, they think it balances your humours. You lie still while they slice open a vein in your arm or neck, and let the badness drain. You grow dizzy, lightheaded, maybe you faint. They say that's a good sign. Then there are poultices, warm, stinking clumps of herbs and rotted bread pressed to your chest, blistering agents to draw the illness out through your skin, tonics made of turpentine, vinegar, or alcohol, and laudanum, sweet, syrupy opium in a bottle handed out like candy to babies, mothers, anyone whose nerves are deemed excessive or inconvenient. You might also be told to drink beef tea, a hot, greasy broth that smells like a slaughterhouse and tastes like despair. It won't heal you, but it will keep you quiet, which is all most people want from a sick woman. If your illness involves the womb, and somehow it always does, you're told it's hysteria, the wandering womb, the emotional uterus, the idea that your reproductive system has too many opinions and is causing trouble out of spite. The cure? Ice baths, rest, bed rest, specifically. Months of it, years even. You're not allowed to read, walk, think, or speak of your symptoms. Just lie still and deteriorate quietly. Some women never recover, not because of their illness, but because no one believed it existed. And childbirth? It is not sacred. It is not serene. It is terrifying. You labor in a room with no anesthesia, biting on cloth, your hands gripping the bedpost as your body tries to split itself open. There are no sterile tools, no latex gloves. If the midwife is skilled, you might survive. If not, you might bleed out before sunrise. The child may be stillborn, deformed, blue from lack of air, or worse, they may live but carry a cough from birth that never quite leaves. And should you survive, you may be up again in a week, expected to resume your chores, your posture, your silence. You may hemorrhage weeks later, you may develop a fever, and then they'll say, "She was never quite the same after the baby." But death is always nearby. It moves like smoke through the streets. Cholera in the water, typhoid in the milk, smallpox on someone's breath, scarlet fever in the nursery, sepsis on the doctor's unwashed hands. Even a paper cut could turn gangrenous. A broken bone could fester. A toothache could become a fatal infection. And if none of those get you, winter might. Cold homes and colder streets. Starvation, exposure, despair. You walk past the morning shops every day. Whole businesses built around grief. Black veils, jet beads, memorial jewelry made from your sister's hair. You see children wearing full black suits. You pass crepe-covered carriages. You hear the slow, deliberate tolling of the death bell, and never know whose name it tolls for. You know mourning customs better than you know your own reflection. First morning, full black, for a year. Second morning, less black, fewer tears. Then half mourning, when colour slowly returns to your wardrobe, but not to your face. You are expected to grieve publicly, beautifully, quietly, especially if you're a widow. If you're a widow, you wear black for the rest of your life. You stop attending dances. You speak less, smile less. Remarrying too soon brings scandal. Waiting too long brings pity. Children die often. Mothers die often. Husbands, not as much. But when they do, it's the woman left to arrange the funeral, the debts, the shame. You live with death. You plan for it. You keep a mourning dress tucked away just in case. And sometimes you pray for it not because you want to die, but because the pain, the fatigue, the constant dread, it dulls the fear. Death begins to feel like the only guaranteed relief. And through all this, you are expected to stay graceful, stay kind, stay hopeful. But hope is a luxury, and in the Victorian world, women don't get luxuries. They get laudanum and lace and the polite permission to suffer quietly until they disappear. Your life, your entire life, has been shaped not by your decisions, but by your gender. You were born a girl, and that meant one thing from the moment you took your first breath. You belonged to someone. First your father, then your husband, maybe your employer, maybe the church, but never to yourself. As a Victorian woman, you do not own your life, you simply perform it. If you're lucky, you grew up in a home where your mother was tired but not cruel, where she taught you how to sew straight seams and walk without stomping, where she whispered advice about childbirth and bleeding, and how to please a man who never learned your favorite color. Maybe she taught you how to read, maybe, but only enough to manage the Bible, a letter, or a recipe. Too much education? That's dangerous. Educated women are difficult, and a difficult woman is an unmarried woman, and an unmarried woman is a burden. Marriage is not a celebration. It is an economic arrangement, a transaction wrapped in lace and fear. You don't marry for love. You marry for status, for security, or, if you're poor, for survival. Your wedding dress is white, not because of purity, but because Queen Victoria wore white. And now everyone must. Your dowry is discussed like livestock. Your worth calculated in acres and shillings, and how well you can tolerate silence. Once you're married, you become your husband's property. Legally. Entirely. Your body, your wages, your children, all his. He can beat you, imprison you, institutionalize you. You have no legal recourse unless you're wealthy enough to hire a lawyer. And even then, the law favors him. Always him. If you are middle class, you are expected to be the angel in the house. a phrase used unironically. It means pure, passive, self-sacrificing. You must float through your home like a scented ghost, clean, graceful, attentive, and most importantly, silent. You keep the children quiet. You keep the servants in line. You never, ever raise your voice unless it's to say, "Yes, dear." If you are working class, none of that matters. You work, you haul, you sweat, you scream, you get pregnant again and again, often without choice. You give birth in beds that are barely yours, in rooms with thin walls and thicker pain. There is no poetry in your motherhood, only risk. Childbirth is brutal. It's private, but never truly alone. There are no hospitals for you. There is no anesthesia unless someone pays for it. You bleed, you tear, you shake, you might die. And if you survive, you are expected to smile and ask if it's a boy. God help you if it's not, because boys are valuable. Boys carry names. Boys inherit jobs, money, property, a daughter, another mouth, another dowry, another risk of disgrace. And that daughter, she's watching you, learning. She learns not to speak at the table, not to run in the house, not to question when her brother gets more food, or more attention, or more freedom. She learns to play with dolls, not to prepare for motherhood, but to prepare for servitude. She learns to curtsy, to recite scripture, to sit still while a neighbor tugs her hair into a fashionable knot that pulls at her scalp and says, "Boys don't like messy girls." She learns to hate her body the moment it changes. Her chest must be hidden, her legs must be covered, her voice must be softened, her mind must be quieted. She is told daily that her value lies in what she is not too loud, not too opinionated, not too sexual, not too educated, not too much. If she misbehaves, she is scolded. If she rebels, she is shamed. If she dreams, she is laughed at. If she gets pregnant before marriage, her life is over. The baby might be hidden, given away, or drowned, and she will be cast out, sent to a home for fallen women, where she will scrub floors in silence, while others whisper about how she ruined herself as if she had the power to give consent in a world that never asked for it. And the sons, they work young, 6, maybe 7, sent to factories, mines, ships. They lose fingers to machines, eyes to accidents, childhood to hunger, but still they have more freedom than you ever will. They can inherit, speak, walk alone at night, vote. You, on the other hand, do not own your own children. Legally, they belong to your husband. If he wants to send them to boarding school or away entirely, he can. If he dies, custody goes to his relatives, not you. If you're poor and unwed, your child may be taken, sold, or claimed by the parish and raised in an institution where compassion is measured in porridge portions. Family life is held up as sacred, but what it often is, behind closed doors, is a slow suffocation disguised as duty. Your days are spent managing chaos, boiling nappies, mending socks, teaching children to read with books that tell them girls should be gentle and boys should be brave. You scrub stains from shirts that will never thank you. You cradle children who won't remember. You try to love, but love is hard when you are so tired. And yet you must be perfect, not for yourself, for the neighbors, for the parish, for the reputation. Your child throws a tantrum in the street, your failure. Your child gets lice, your filth. Your child dies, your fault. You must have done something wrong. You cry into your hands, in private, in silence, because motherhood is sacred, and sacred things are not allowed to complain. And when your daughters grow old enough to notice, you teach them what your mother taught you, that to survive in this world, you must learn to smile with a closed mouth, dream with closed eyes, and live with closed fists hidden in your apron, gripping yourself to stay still. And you hope selfishly, silently, that maybe they will forget the way your back bent from the weight of everyone else's comfort. It's afternoon. You've survived the morning, survived the children, the prayers, the ironing, the meal. But the day doesn't get easier now. In fact, this is when it sharpens, when the world outside your door gets meaner. Because the afternoon isn't for rest, it's for judgment. Judgment from society, from men, from institutions, from women who think they're doing you a favor by pointing out your failings with a smile. Maybe you're in the street, running an errand, carrying a basket, avoiding eye contact, stepping over horse dung, and pretending the smell of urine doesn't cling to your hem. You pass a constable. He nods at the man behind you, ignores you completely, unless, of course, you speak out of turn, then he notices. Then everyone notices, because a woman who talks back in public is one step away from a reputation. Reputations are everything. You don't need to do something wrong to ruin yours. You just have to be seen with someone suspicious. Look too confident. Walk unchaperoned. Wear the wrong color. Breathe a little too freely. Let's say you're working class. You deliver laundry. You drop off mended coats. You sweep the doorstep of your employer's home. You know your place. Until you don't. You're accused of theft. There's no proof, but the missing brooch was last seen near your laundry pile. You say nothing, because if you argue, they'll say you're hysterical. If you cry, they'll say you're guilty. The master reports you. The magistrate doesn't ask questions. You're fined a week's wages or worse, sentenced to a month in the workhouse. Ah, yes, the workhouse. A place designed not to help the poor, but to punish them for existing. You go in hungry. You come out broken. Your hair is cut short. Your children are taken from you. You scrub floors for soup so thin it barely counts as liquid. It's charity, they say. Character building. But what it really is punishment for being visible in the wrong class. And the law? It's not your ally. If you are beaten by your husband, the law says it's a private matter. If you strike him back, that's assault. If you speak too forcefully in public, you can be charged with disorderly conduct. If you loiter too long in one spot, especially near a pub or a church, you might be accused of soliciting. Yes, that kind of soliciting. No proof required. Just suggestion. Just rumor. And once that label is applied, you're no longer a woman. You're a type. The fallen type. The type that no one hires. The type the vicar pretends not to see. The type respectable women pretend not to have once been friends with. Men don't get this treatment. Men can drink too much, shout in public, fight in the street, and it's just blowing off steam. You're difficult. And if you're poor and female and outspoken, you're a nuisance. Let's say you work in a factory. The foreman makes comments, stands too close, tells you to stay late. You say no. You get dismissed without reference, without recourse. Let's say you're a maid and the master of the house visits your attic room one night. He's drunk, he's smiling, and no one will believe you if you scream. If you get pregnant, it's your fault. If you try to leave, it's abandonment. If you protest, it's seduction. And if you fall publicly, tragically, they'll say it was because you couldn't control your emotions. Not because someone with power used it against you. And if you try to seek justice, good luck. Because the courts are full of men. The juries are all men. The laws were written by men for men. In rooms women weren't even allowed to enter. Now imagine you're not white, or not English, or not able-bodied, or not Christian. Whatever rights you might have had are now fractions of fractions. You're not just a woman, you're a problem. The double standards deepen. A man who fathered a dozen children out of wedlock? A rogue. A scoundrel. A charming danger. A woman who gives birth once without a ring? A disgrace. A cautionary tale. a walking warning to other girls. And women turn on women. Middle-class matrons scold their maids for not smiling enough. Poor women shame each other for needing charity. Working girls judge each other's hemline. No one's safe from scrutiny and everyone polices everyone else. Because that's what they've been taught. It's how the system survives, by making you part of your own punishment. Even the punishments themselves are gendered. A man might go to debtor's prison and return with sympathy. A woman? Shame. A man might be flogged and walk away. A woman? She's flogged by proxy through gossip, exclusion, humiliation. If you are loud, you are unfeminine. If you are quiet, you are suspicious. If you are unmarried, you are unwanted. If you are widowed, you are dangerous. You cannot win. And if you try to organize to fight back, you're called a radical, a hysteric, a suffragette, said with a sneer. You're laughed at in cartoons, called shrill in newspapers, arrested, force-fed in prison. Your body becomes a battlefield again. So by the time the afternoon ends and the sun starts to slip behind the chimneys and the streets turn orange with soot-filtered light, you are not just tired. You are wary. You are watched. And you are deeply, quietly aware that one wrong sentence, one wrong skirt length, one wrong expression could change your life. Not because you did something wrong, but because you were born a woman in a world designed to make that a punishable offense. It's night now. You've done your duty. You've smiled, curtsied, obeyed. You've cleaned the hearth, folded the linens, kissed children who don't know how close you came to screaming. You've whispered polite prayers and swallowed impolite thoughts. You've hidden everything that's real beneath everything that's expected. And now the sun is gone and you are not safe. Victorian night is not gentle. It's not romantic. It doesn't smell like roses or echo with laughter from a gas-lit cafe. No. Night smells like soot and sweat, and the breath of a stranger too close behind you. If you're working class, you may still be outside delivering, fetching, returning from labor that doesn't end when the daylight does. The streets are slick. The fog is thick. The lamps are weak and spaced too far apart. Every alley yawns like a mouth. Every footstep that isn't yours becomes a warning. There is no street patrol for women like you. No help if someone follows you home. No justice if someone doesn't let you make it there. You walk fast, but not too fast that draws attention. You keep your eyes down, but not too down that suggests fear. You carry nothing valuable. You hope your boots don't squeak. You hope your cough doesn't start up. You hope, mostly, that you disappear. If you're a maid, you might still be working. You don't get a curfew. You get a bell. And if the master rings, you answer, even if it's midnight, even if he's been drinking, even if he stares too long or reaches too far. No one believes the maid. No one protects the maid. You tiptoe down the back stairs in the dark, careful not to wake the rest of the house. If you fall, you break your wrist. If you wake someone, you lose your job. And either way, you don't get to sleep until the last candle is snuffed. If you're a wife, your night depends on your husband. If he's kind, you may talk for a few moments before he turns over and snores into the linen. If he's indifferent, he may grunt a good night, then roll away. If he's cruel, he may not speak at all, only take. And if he does take, and you conceive, and the child is unwanted or dangerous to your health, the law will be of no help. Termination is illegal. Even discussion of it is forbidden. So you carry, or you die trying not to. Your bed is not yours. Your body is not yours. Even your sleep isn't really sleep, because the house at night is full of sounds. The drip of the tap, the creak of beams expanding and contracting with the weather, the scratching of something in the walls, the baby coughing in the next room, the cough that doesn't sound like a cold anymore, the silence after it, somehow worse, You sleep in shifts or not at all. If you're a mother, you never fully drift. Your ear is always listening. Is that crying? Is that the start of a fever? Did someone come through the gate? You lie in a room with 2 or 3 others. Privacy is a dream. You hear every breath, every movement. You smell the soap on someone's skin and the coal dust they brought in from outside. If you're poor, your bed is a sack of straw on the floor. If you're middle class, it's a thin mattress on a frame. If you're a servant, it's a cot in the attic with a window that doesn't shut, letting in the damp and the wind, and sometimes worse. You pull a blanket around your shoulders. It's itchy, heavy. It smells like everyone who's ever used it before you. The air is cold. Your breath fogs. You listen to the ticking of a clock, the scuttling of rats, the moan of wood in the rafters. Somewhere, a horse neighs in its stable. Somewhere farther, a scream distant, but real. And still, you do not sleep because night is not safe. Not in your home, not in your head, and not in your body. You've seen what happens at night. Fires, for one. All these candles and gaslights and paper walls. One spark, and it's over. You've seen families escape barefoot into the streets, soot-streaked and sobbing. You've seen cribs turned to ash. You've seen the way smoke can find a baby before anyone else can. Then there are break-ins, not by cat burglars, not by master thieves, but by hungry men, angry men, drunk men. Men who know the constable only patrols the rich streets. You lock the door, but you don't trust it. Not really. Even your dreams aren't yours. They're crowded with visions of doctors in dark suits, of children you lost, of mistakes you made, of things you wanted but never dared to ask for. You dream of food, of breath, of running barefoot through grass, of floating, weightless, corset-free. Then you wake, and it's still dark, and you're still inside this life. Some women never wake. And honestly, no one seems surprised. Death is never far in Victorian life, but at night it draws closer, like it prefers the quiet. You've been to funerals, dozens, for children who didn't make it through the winter, for sisters who bled too long after childbirth, for mothers who simply stopped waking, for neighbors found frozen, for factory girls who inhaled too much dust and started coughing blood. They never scream in the end, they just fade. You've seen death in the face of your friend as she whispered, "It's probably just nerves," and then didn't get out of bed again. You've seen it in your own eyes in the mirror, that faint questioning flicker that asks, "Is this what I am now?" Not a person, just a pattern. Wake, serve, suffer, sleep, repeat. You curl onto your side, your knees to your chest. You wrap your arms around your ribs, as if you can hold yourself in one piece until the sun returns. You tell yourself you're fine. You tell yourself you're lucky. You tell yourself it could be worse. But deep down, even as sleep finally creeps in and your mind begins to fog, you feel the truth crawling through your ribs. This life, this cold, corseted, candle-lit cage is not living, it's enduring, and somewhere deep in your dreams, a version of you screams just loud enough for the night to hear. It's over now. The sun will rise again, the street lamps will fade, the birds will stir, and somewhere a maid will light the first fire of the day. But for now, the world is quiet. You're in bed, a hard bed, a cold bed, but it's still a place to rest your body, if not your thoughts. Tonight, you've lived a full day in the corseted, soot-stained, whisper-bound skin of a Victorian woman. You've woken in a chill room where silence was safety. You've splashed your face with freezing water that might have been clean. You've eaten bread that tasted more like compromise than nourishment. You've laced yourself into bone and linen. You've bent your back to labor that no one thanked you for. You've smiled politely through suffering. You've said yes when you meant no. You've swallowed grief like tea. And you've fallen asleep not because you were at peace, but because exhaustion eventually wins. You've endured the weight of expectation, of religion that told you your body was a curse, of medicine that confused your pain for madness, of marriages that trapped you in velvet and silence, of children you birthed but didn't own, of rules made by men who never imagined being you, and all of it while being told you were delicate, fragile, too emotional, too irrational, too much, and somehow not enough. But here's the truth. You were none of those things. Victorian women weren't fragile. They were unthanked survivors, quiet revolutionaries in petticoat, women who buried children and still rose the next day to scrub the floor, who smiled through miscarriages, menstruation, and mental illness without speaking a word of it because no one would listen, who endured assault, shame, illness, poverty, and still managed to sing lullabies, stitch buttons, and write letters scented with lavender. They were told their lives were small, but inside those small spaces, they carried galaxies of grit. Tonight, as you rest, let yourself feel what they could not always express. How lucky you are to be warm, to be clean, to be safe, to have a voice and to use it, to move freely, to choose your clothing, to breathe deeply without a corset crushing your ribs, to speak and not be called hysterical, to rest not because you're broken, but because you're human. So breathe gently now. Let your lungs fill all the way something she could never do. Let your body relax, not into a too stiff mattress in a too cold room, but into comfort. You earned it. Let your jaw soften, your fingers unfurl, your thoughts grow slow. You don't have to think anymore tonight. You don't have to plan. You don't have to pretend. No one's watching you now. Not the neighbors, not the priest, not the master, not the man in the hallway who thinks women are meant to suffer quietly. Just you, here, safe. It's all right to sleep now. The fire is out. The baby is quiet. The boots are off. The corset is folded away. You don't have to wake up in that world again. You don't have to beg for medicine, or cry behind the door, or press your lips shut when someone misunderstands your silence. You don't have to survive for someone else's comfort. You just rest, because you are not in Victorian England. You're here, now modern, breathing, alive. And that's more radical than any suffragette's banner. So tonight, as you drift off, remember you don't have to wake up in 1853, not in soot, not in silence, not in servitude. Sleep well,